I give it 6 seconds because that's what he told me to wait for. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Sugar and Silk. I say Sugar and Silk. Actually, the silk is missing this week, but fear not because we have, by popular demand, the venerable Gary Stretch back. How's it going, Gary?
I'm good. How are you, Ben? Popular demand. I've not
very...
heard that in years.
You've not heard what in years?
Popular demand.
Yeah, well, as I say, Gary, I've made it public that you've expressed an interest in joining this kind of team of Three Musketeers, as it will be. I had nothing but good feedback about that. It's funny, you are actually disproportionately well known and well remembered and popular compared to what you actually achieved in the sphere of boxing. We've got the YouTube channel up and running. Your interview's done much more engagement than the others. And I think there is something that I think people are interested in you. And you know what? The accolades you get for that role in Dead Man's Shoes, it does appear to have actually, that is your legacy actually over and above boxing, it would appear to me.
It seems that way, yeah. It was well received, the movie, and yeah, very proud of it.
Yeah, I'm getting indie kind of mates from old hippie mates from Stroud who don't know boxing from badminton who are saying, is that the guy from Dead Man's Shoes that you're doing things with now? And they're impressed with that. They don't. If it was Sugar or Leonard, they wouldn't care. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No. Whatever floats the boat, you know. I mean, yeah, it's something that we did, and there was a movie that everyone told me not to do, and so it just shows you got to follow your gut. And I fell out with an agent over it because I'd just come off a movie Alexander, which was huge. I worked on it for 9 months, made a lot of money. Angelina Jolie, Colin Farrell, Anthony Hopkins, yeah. Huge film. And you in the acting business, you're up and down, and then you land something. It was a great role. It was Oliver Stone directing.
Yeah.
And you're as good as your last movie. And so in the film world, it's like when you get booked on another movie, they say, what was his rate? And so if you get X amount a week, then you get at least that, maybe 50% more on your next movie. So I get offered this movie, Dead Man's Shoes, for no money. And he said, you can't do it. I said, but I like it. And, but you can't take that route. But I said, it's I'm passionate about the movie. I want to do it. So I did the movie and, at the cost of an agent. I ended up leaving the agent over the movie. And, as time's gone on, it's become probably my best work. So, you're only as good as the material you get. And so it's the first real, it's ironic because I went to America. All the stuff I've done is American. And I really wanted to get my teeth into something British. I'm a very Englishman from heart. I'm proud to be English. And I wanted to do some English and it ticked all the boxes. And I just followed my heart. And the other thing was the role was such a dark role, and there was times I was very uncomfortable approaching it. And Shane Meadows, the director, said to me, Gary, if you're going to be bad, be bad. And so I trusted that, and I went, and I thought they were going to stone me at the premiere, but the response was amazing, and the rewards were great, and I loved the process, and here we are.
Brilliant. So, moving on to matters boxing. Tomorrow night, in a Polish city that I can't quite pronounce the name of, the three-quarter heavyweight champion of the world, Alexander Usyk, takes on rank outsider Daniel Dubois. And, I can't see hardly anybody picking Dubois who isn't partisan, like Dev Sani, who's very, right knee deep in the Frank Warren organization, is championing Dubois' chances and saying that he's going to shock the world. Frank Warren's saying it, obviously. Daniel Dubois said his tactics, there's no secret about the fact that he's looking to use his size and his strength, and he's looking to rough the smaller man up. Your thoughts?
I take the opinion of probably the majority, but something changed me today. Dubois has this childlike quality, you know. He's got these eyes like a little puppy dog. He's very gently spoken. He seems like a very nice human being. He looks like he should not be in the business. He's just very. He has this innocence, Ben. You've seen him, And is it a new team he's working with now?
Yes, he's working with Don Charles, who is an experienced trainer. He's been there and done it at the elite level, especially with heavyweights. He was Derek Chisora's long-term trainer, so he was in the corner for Derek's fight with Vitaly Klitschko all those years ago. He was in the corner for all the difference it made in the Fury fight last December. Don Charles is a very passionate, committed, savvy, clever trainer, and that's a good asset. You know, Dubois is going into this with. I mean, he had Shane McGuigan before that, right, Gary? And to be honest with you, it's hard to keep up sometimes with these developments. I don't know what happened to the arrangement with Shane McGuigan and Daniel Dubois. Just the next thing I know, he was working with my friend Don Charles in Finchley. You know what it is, Gary. You know a lot of people, boxing fans, when they discuss it, and some of these people, with all due respect to them, and we need boxing fans, they've never been in a gym in their life, and they've certainly never trained anybody. And they say, "Oh, I think he should be trained with Adam Booth," or "I think he'd be good with Virgil Hunter." And you say, you know, knowing a bit more about the business, you say, "Why do you think this? Based on what?" Because I don't know who people should be training with half the time, to be honest with you. And I don't know about you, but I only really make a judgment if I've seen a trainer and I've seen him work. Do you know what I mean? I have seen Don Charles work, and I know he knows his stuff.
You know, it's funny. It's like a relationship, you know. It's chemistry. It either works, it doesn't work. And you can have two amazing people, but they just don't gel.
Yeah.
You know,
well, Muhammad Ali and Archie Moore, right? Young Cassius Clay. I don't know if you know this, but you may do. When he turned pro with that 11 millionaire syndicate in Louisville after winning the Olympic gold medal, they put him with Archie Moore, which seemed like it was, a good idea. Why wouldn't it be? All-time great like that, absolute guru. And they just couldn't get along. There was an ego clash. There was a personality clash. Cassius Clay, or the way Ali told it in later years, was that he said the guy wanted me to be like, he had me washing up and sweeping up the gym and, all this kind of idea of don't think you're too much of a big shot, making him do menial tasks because he thought it was good for his mentality or development. And Ali said all he wanted to do was box. He didn't like some of the training methods and the discipline that Archie tried to exert upon him. And so after the first fight, do you know what? I don't know who was in Muhammad Ali's corner for his debut against Sonny Hunsaker. That would be interesting to find out because Angelo Dundee was with him for the second fight against Herb Seiler. But the point being, you couldn't say Archie Moore wasn't a good coach, no doubt. He didn't have a lot to offer. And I don't need to tell you about the fighter, but it didn't work out.
The thing is, my feelings on this is there's two absolute black and white situations going to happen. I go back to the personality of Daniel, and he's got this childlike thing, which an innocence. Did you ever see the movie of Mice and Men?
I read the book for O level at school, and you liken him to Lenny, right?
Yes, but not to Daniel. Don't hate me and kill me. I don't think you're slow or backward. Or he was a.
Yeah.
He was a big, strong man, but and he would make mistakes, and he would But if you touched his bunny rabbit, it'd go through 10 guys, And so there's something about this quality that he had that Daniel has, and it's not in the back kind of slow way. It's this innocence. It's like he's. I think he needs someone to just push a certain button. Today at the weigh-in, they said, anything you want to say, and he preached some verse of some kind of religious. I don't know where it was from. I'm not that big on the text of religion, but he came up with this very specific proverb. And then, unlike I've ever seen him ever, and I've kind of followed most of his fights. I've not been on him, but I've watched him like I watch most. Unlike anything else, they said, and they went to ask him another question, and he just went and just walked. Yeah. And he's like he's ready. Now, it's going to do one or two things. He's either going to go all out and do what we want Joshua sometimes to do.
Yes.
And it's either going to get the Chisora effect and maybe a younger Chisora with a little more spark and a little more desire even would have been the 10% extra that would have won him the fight, because it was very, very close.
So you think it was close against Chisora back a couple of years ago? You believe that, yeah?
Well, I tell you this much: he didn't look like a multi world champion, gold medalist. He looked like a guy who maybe won it, but in no way did he look good.
I hear you. I think he looked uncomfortable, especially for 3 or 4 rounds.
Uncomfortable often and pressured, and eventually, let's break it down. Let's take it. Everybody looks at Usyk. Let's look at Chisora. So he looked uncomfortable. He got pressured. And as the fight went on, did Usyk get better or did Chisora decline? You understand? And that's the big factor here. If you can say, I watched that fight, and as the fight went on, Usyk, sure, he got into his rhythm and did what he did, but he did that in a way in which Chisora was slightly, he's an older man. He's had a lot of mileage. And so the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, which is where he was really at his best, was when he was at his best. Yeah. And if we have a young lion who not only will get the 3, 4 rounds at his best, but with the young lion, unlike the old lion,
won't fade.
Not only will he not fade, he will get the confidence will grow. Yeah. And so he will get momentum, and then who knows what will happen.
I hear what you're saying. The one issue that somebody might have with that, did you see Dubois' last fight on the undercard of Fury Chisora at Tottenham Hotspur?
Yes.
And he was in against an unremarkable southpaw from South Africa. Significant that he was a southpaw, obviously, because Usyk is. And it was ludicrously easy for that guy to hit Daniel with straight lefts. He decked him in the first round, as you'll remember. Now, all right, some of the problems he had after that was he appeared to hurt his ankle, didn't he? Something to do with his back foot or his back leg. And after that, that was causing him problems more than the concussion of the shot that knocked him down. And there's 2 ways of looking at it, I suppose. You could say that is a woeful indicator when going in with an accomplished ring general and elite fighter like Alexander Usyk. Or you could say, well, no, he came through adversity, and he, in some ways, perhaps he exercised the ghost of the surrender against Joe Joyce a couple of years beforehand.
I think we have a bit of both, but again, it's this mental thing. When he was getting caught with the straight left hands, if he fights that fight with Usyk, there's no fight. The only way he's going to fight Usyk, he's going to have to get into a telephone box with him, and he's going to have to. And Usyk cannot be the master boxer that he is unless you let him. If you cut the distance and you jump on him and you pressure him and you have the ability to do so, the problem with Usyk, that Joshua's biggest problem was, Joshua had caution. He gave Usyk space, and you give Usyk space, there's no fight. Angles, footwork, speed, intelligence, IQ. You give him time to operate, he operates. When Chisora in the first fight didn't give him the time, and you can't be an operator, you can't be a slick boxer when someone's grabbing you and pulling your arms and leaning on you and throwing you and jumping on you before you could get off the ropes.
And you know about that. You know a thing or two about that, right? Because you were a slick boxer and slick southpaw. So you presumably dealt with that on occasion.
Of course, and everyone would try and now the problem Daniel will have is if he tries to do that, and Usyk has got the answer to that, meaning Chisora is able to effectively do some of that. There's a gap. And Daniel's got to, break through the gap. If he can get through the gap and get into that situation, it can be advantageous. It can be very disadvantageous if he tries to get through the gap and gets executed. And that's the thing that's going to happen here. He's either going to be ultra successful, I think, and maybe be a better version of Chisora, or he's going to get executed. And that is where I'm, what I do like about going into this fight is he's definitely not the guy of the last fight mentally.
Yeah,
He's definitely on a different level. So
it's
will
fine.
that get him crucified, or will we see something we haven't seen? I don't know.
Where do you stand on the champion? Some people talk about him in the most highest falutin terms. I remember before he even moved up to heavyweight, I remember a couple of people opining after he beat Gassiev to become undisputed cruiserweight champion that he was the finest cruiserweight in history. Obviously, some people beg to differ and advocating Evander Holyfield. But it's funny, Gary. I remember when Joshua lost.
I think John Conte would have beat him in his prime.
Yeah, John Conte. See, keep coming out with these sound bites that we can take and make into YouTube shorts, please, Gary. Keep coming out with these things, because then we could just be the caption: Gary Stretch, John Conte would have beat Alexander Usyk. This is how we do this marketing thing. You understand?
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
No, I think Conte would have beat Usyk. I tell you, Usyk is a mystery, and no one's found the answers to the mystery, but they always get found. Maybe age does it, and so it's unfair to say. Maybe he has a mystery that no one found age revealed. But when I look at greats, when I look at the greatest of all time, and you look at the Mayweathers, people may not like the defensive style, but he's a master. Yes. When you can make Canelo look like a little boy,
yeah,
when 45 others couldn't, you have to give him plaudits. And they all talk about, well, he'd had 40 plus fights.
Yeah,
and
you can't knock that
young.
win, Gary. Yeah, they're trying to make out that like he was a rookie with 10 fights or something.
Yeah,
they
it's
say
a joke.
That Canelo was green. Nah, he was kind of semi-built at that point. That's a great win.
And I think that Canelo learned from the school that he got from. I think he went back and just watched everything that Mayweather did and copied it. Because
that's what they say.
But when you look at them kind of fighters, Sugar Ray Leonard, even Hagler, who was an incredible middleweight, but he didn't have the finesse of a Ray Leonard, and he didn't.
Although he did have it though, he did have finesse, right? Sometimes people, they cast Hagler as this kind of come forward brawler when he was actually a boxer and a counter puncher often when he wanted to be against Simpson, against Benny Briscoe. Hagler had skills. He was never going to have the kind of the style and profile of a Sugar Ray Leonard,
Yeah, but when I'm looking at it just as a science, as a like the perfect this, that, the other, and all of the elements together with a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit like Hagler was incredible, one of my favorite fighters of all time. But when you're talking about the complete package, Ray Leonard was one, Ali, of course, in his prime. Usyk, for me, I think is a very unusual guy that no one's found the puzzle. I think he's very smart. He's very slick. He's awkward. He must be very awkward.
Yeah.
But he doesn't look great ever to me. He's the way he punches, but he's effective, and he must have something that no one's worked out yet. But I don't look at him at that level. I look at his achievements at that level.
Yeah.
But I don't look at him as a pure. It's like looking at a classic car, and there's a beautiful car and there's another one. They said that's a real classic. You said, sure, and may be the best of its kind, but I like this Aston Vantage, whatever it is. It's like he's not the Aston Martin to me. So.
Talking of vintage cars, how much of a factor is it that the guy, it will be 37 next January. I know that fighters are lasting longer today than they did in the previous eras, probably for a number of reasons, probably because they don't have as many fights and they don't fight in 8-ounce gloves over 15 rounds, etc. And possibly because they're taking various kind of pharmaceutical enhancers, who knows. But Usyk is still 37 next January, Gary. And he hasn't fought for a whole year. It's almost exactly a year to the day. I believe he fought Joshua on this day last year, yesterday, last year, if you see what I mean. It was that close. It was this same week. So he's still been out the ring 12 months. I mean, would you take heart from that, from Dubois' perspective?
I would. I mean, the thing is with fighters these days is... well, it's human beings. When I remember seeing my father when I was a child, he was 42. I remember the age. It was just,
Yeah.
He was 42, and to me, he was old. You know,
Yes.
I'm almost 60,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying I'm young, but I train sometimes, and sometimes I even feel like, well, I wouldn't mind. I see these YouTubers, you know.
You think, let's have a go? Yeah.
I would stamp Jake Paul in his head. I mean, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but it's the reality of it.
You would.
I've worked with guys in gyms and helped some of the MMA guys, and I'm still doing it. Like it's embarrassing, and so you know, you say, you know, you're 56 years old or whatever, it's 56 or 57, I can't remember. But so we're getting better as we're getting older. But the thing is with Usyk, I think what you've got to remember is these fighters. He's 100% pro. He's a married man. He's a very good family man. He's a God-given man, and his life is the game. So I think he's going to have long legs. Of course, some of the great talents burn out, but they burn out because they burn out. You know, both sides of the coin. But I think Usyk is. I think at Usyk's stage of the game, the break's good for him probably.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. You know what? Some people can point to inactivity, but on the other side of that, there is preservation and longevity might be encouraged sometimes by having a break.
Unlike Joshua, he's not still learning the job. He knows the job well. So to be rested, it won't affect him. With Anthony, he's got to keep momentum, keep learning. New coaches, you know, he can't afford to sit still. Whereas Usyk, he's got the same team for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
He knows if he wants to take a break, he takes a break, and it's not going to affect him at all.
No, and it's interesting you mentioned Joshua again, because I think there is something when you think about that robotic nature, because great fighters do things naturally.
It's all mental.
Yeah, great fighters do things naturally, right? And they do things by osmosis, and they do things sometimes without thinking. As much as people talk about boxing IQ and things like that, some of it, as you know, is on feel, just in the moment. And people like Anthony Joshua, Frank Bruno back in the day, and Daniel Dubois has shades of it too. There is this essence sometimes that it's all a bit by numbers, and that they can't make those adjustments of intuition in the eye of the storm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's
Dubois looks a little wooden.
Again, I think, you know, I bring, you know, the fight game for me, people always say it's mental. Let's break down what's mental. You know, I put it to basics. If I went out and had a fight with a person, a stranger, or you did, or Silk did, or anyone who's done a little bit, you know, the odds are probably on our side.
Yeah.
But it changes drastically if there's some history, or you've hurt someone's child, or you've done something you're going to affect someone's family, or then the opponent becomes extremely dangerous. And what is it that makes him dangerous? It's an all-in thing. Like you're going to have to kill the guy to stop him. And so the same animal becomes a very different animal. And so, you know, people talk to me about fighting and could you knock this? I never, every fight, every day is going to be different. If you have 5 fights with the same guy, I think you get 5 results, and maybe different, depending on, you know, where they're at. Now, with Daniel, I think the biggest hole in his game is mental. That's my read on him. I think he's a strong kid. He's got a nice jab. He's pretty fast. He moves okay. I would like him to be a little more elusive.
Yeah.
He bangs. I mean, 18 out of 19 have gone to sleep pretty much. He hits hard.
Yeah.
So what did Mike Tyson have? He had all of the incredible abilities. He was a much better defensive fighter. Tyson, 99% of his fights, he come out without a mark on him. You know,
he did in the early days. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Mike, you know, Mike obviously had amazing hand speed, and he had an enormous amount of natural talent, and he was obsessive about his craft when he was younger. And obviously, everybody talks about that zigzag head movement, yeah, with Mike, and the angles, yeah. Mike would, the thing when when they slip a punch and then they shift their weight round to the side. Mike was so good at that, and some of his offensive combinations are really outside the box. Actually, I remember Angelo Dundee when he knocked out Trevor Berbick in 1986, saying, "I never seen that combination before." He said a right hook to the body, a right uppercut to the chin, and a left hook. He said that was new to him in all his years, of a guru of the boxing scene. And he said he'd never. Obviously, nowadays all the Tyson imitators do it, don't they? They throw that right hook to the ribs, then a right uppercut in the middle. That's the kind of the karaoke Tyson approach nowadays.
But outside of all of that, what was for me the biggest thing about Mike was this and this fire that he brought. He brought this intensity. You knew he was going to kill you. I mean, he and I don't think this sounds very strange. I don't think Mike was the bravest guy in the world.
Oh, no, he wasn't. Listen, you're absolutely right, Gary. And Teddy Atlas, I know he's a hostile witness. He would agree with you. He said he was actually scared inside and didn't believe in himself.
But that makes him extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
Put a cat in a corner.
Yeah.
And that danger, that craziness that he had was what worked for him. Now,
it worked until he encountered adversity.
Until he come to Holyfield, and Holyfield was
Douglas. Douglas before that. There was.
Well, I don't know if it was. I don't know if that was that or whether it was condition with Douglas. But he could have been in the best condition in the world with Holyfield. Holyfield, he was not going to allow him to do what he wanted to do. And what's interesting is, I mean, this is the one thing. And I'm a fan of Tyson's, but when you bite someone, and the ref says one more time, you're out, box, you want out, right?
Yeah, I would think so, Gary.
And then the bigger fight was after the fight was over, when there's 500 people between everybody. So Mike Tyson is incredible, and I'm a huge fan. But when you break it down to who he was, if you do a psychological breakdown on Mike, you have to bring in the elements of fear and of this and of that and his childhood, and how amazing this makes Mike more amazing. The fact of where he went with all of that, he used it all for his favor rather than let it destroy him. But I'm talking about these elements because this mental thing, is what makes or breaks moments in fights. And it's like, if someone gets into Daniel's head, of course technicalities come into this. If you get in with a guy and he's just so too good, too smart, will not make it happen. But if you get into a kid's head, he said, just give me 1 hour, 36 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
And because I watch fights all the time, and it's a world title fight. It's a life-changing situation, and there's 2 rounds left, and they just plod through the 2 rounds, and it's close, the fight. And then you say he's going to wake up tomorrow and want to shoot himself because if he just give a little bit more, it was that close. He did won the world title.
Yeah. You remember Buddy McGirt saying to Arturo Gatti in the first Mickey Ward fight, "We can rest all day tomorrow, Arturo."
Yes, and so. Daniel's at a place in his life now that if I was him, I tried it a little bit on a smaller scale. Well, it was at a smaller scale, or was it not? With Eubanks, as you know, I sat out for a year, and then I got offered a fight pretty short notice for what I needed.
Yeah, and
I didn't go in, and I tried to win it, and by the 5th round, I was exhausted because I was trying to win. And so if I was Daniel, I would just go all out. He's got nothing to lose. What he would, I think you would have sleepless nights down the line if you just go in, and he's got to go all out. He can't outbox you. He can't outbox this guy. He can't outsmart him.
Maybe some factor, Gary, will be how much Usyk can hurt him, because you can afford, even that you were a boxer, that was your style. But if it was your plan, suppose you came up against someone who was such an elite boxer or was a smaller guy that you felt that you actually couldn't outbox or outspeed, and your plan was to rough him up, that would be contingent on how much respect he could get when he hit you, right? If Usyk doesn't hurt Dubois unduly with his shots for the most part, then that makes it easier to apply that kind of roughneck game plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is with me, I did very well at junior middleweight because I never really got hurt at junior middleweight ever.
Yeah.
And so that was my weight. I was a big junior middleweight, and of course the weight was hard, but I was never really hurt. When you get to moving up in the weights, then it changes. But my approach with Eubanks was almost the same as fighting a junior middleweight. But I
remember you saying immediately after the fight, in the in-ring post-fight interview, I remember you saying, "I thought Chris Eubank couldn't hurt me."
Yes,
ruefully you said it. Disappointed, obviously, but that's what you said. You said, "I thought he couldn't hurt me," and obviously you were acknowledging the fact that had been, a miscalculation.
Yes, completely. Because you've got to remember these guys, weight's a big deal. The one weight up, the two weights up. I mean, Eubanks fought at like heavyweight.
He was massive, mate. Listen,
I turned pro welterweight. So it's the same. There's the two guys. They're just two guys. One goes to almost a heavyweight. Wants to fight Tyson.
You just reminded me.
Fight Mayweather. So
you just reminded me of something.
Scale.
I've just remembered something, Gary. I bumped into Eubank in 2006 on a corner in Soho, right? On a Sunday afternoon. And he looked massive. That was the point, because he was retired a few years. And he looked huge, but still in shape, okay? Which shows you how big he was. But you know what he said? And you can confirm this for me. He was on the phone, yeah? And I kind of troubled him to end the conversation so I could bother him like a bit of a fan. And then I asked him what he was up to, hanging around Soho on a Sunday evening. And he said, "I'm visiting a friend." And he said, "Gary Stretch, actually. It's his apartment up there." Does that ring a bell? Did you used to have an apartment in Soho?
Yes.
Well, isn't that funny that I bumped into him on a corner on a Sunday in 2006, and it was at your apartment, and here we are now doing our thing, and we're going to do big things also.
And he said, he gave me a great compliment because we talked about many things, and he said, he talked about the hardest fight he ever had, and this with Ben, and this and the Watson and all that. But he said to me, Gary, you're one of the most difficult. And he said, I remember sitting down at the end of the third or fourth, saying, I'm not sure how to work this guy out. He said, I always thought I would get to you somehow. But he said, unlike on the other, people say to me, or have said, if Gary Stretch had 6 months to train or a year to train, he would never beat Eubanks. I disagree, because I had less than a month. And if I can beat him for 5 rounds, because I was ahead on all judges' scorecards, if I do another 5 the same, I'm fine. I think, but I was a smaller man. I remember shaking his hand, and he was like grabbing hold of a piece of like a watermelon. He's just bigger man.
Well, Gary, look at what Dan Sherry nearly did in Eubanks' first defense of that WBO middleweight title. You could have done that and then some. I know it's academic now, and history has been written, but you know what I mean. When you look at what Sherry nearly ended that run before it started.
Trained by Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yes, indeed.
And no, I say this on the record. Eubanks beat me fair and square, no question, and I have no excuses. In my heart, do I wish the circumstances were different? Sure. Was it ideal to sit a contract out for a year before and not fight? And no, but I took it. I'm a man. I got beat. Done. But in my heart, I have, you have regrets. You have girlfriends that you didn't put the effort in, and you regret. Yeah. And it's life. But I think on the stage that we're at tomorrow, with a young lion against an old fox or older fox, Daniel's got to be a young lion. He's got to go all in. It's a poker hand. He's got to go all in, and not stupidly, but he's got to be smart. Got to go all in, and I think the most important thing is that he doesn't have any regrets, because forget what we think. Forget what the commentators and even the crowd. He's got to wake up the next morning and not regret. And I think if he can do that, then he wins either way.
Can I trouble you for a final prediction that you'll put your money down on?
Usyk.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, 8 or 9 rounds. I think Daniel will be stopped on his feet, perhaps against the ropes. But I think of that bombardment that Anthony Joshua was subjected to at the end of the first fight at Tottenham Hotspur, and he survived it. Obviously, I have a vision of Usyk shipping similar kind of punishment by about the 8th round, and not surviving it ultimately.
I think there's one thing we're not, addressing also is. Let's give Usyk credit in the fact that he's a new heavyweight and now he's getting into his stride. Every fight he's getting better and bigger and stronger, and for him it's new territory. So we have to give him he's got to get that early stage when he first gets into this different weight. He's got to get. I think he's settled into it now, and I think he's only going to get better for the next couple of fights. I don't see him being enough, and I don't even think it's size. I think Tyson Fury beats him all day long.
So do I, Gary. I mean, I've had a bit of a media blackout just in my own little platform. I haven't been talking about Tyson Fury recently because I resolved not to cover him until he announces a legitimate fight, within the realm of boxing. But having said that, I've always felt that Fury beats Usyk. I know a lot of people are arguing that, Usyk is big enough, and if you're good enough, you're big enough, all the rest of it. And there's a lot of backlash against Tyson Fury. He's become quite unpopular with the rank and file of kind of boxing fans, or the so-called hardcore boxing fans. But I do believe that Fury still beats him, come what may. When you talk about Usyk adjusting to a new weight division, I do wonder, how much longer he'll be around for, because he will be 37, January 17th, which is also Muhammad Ali's birthday, you might recall, next year. But I wonder how much longer. I mean, the idea.
I don't think it's. I think it's this. I think if he beats Fury, he's done.
Yeah.
There's no. I think he does nothing else to. I think he's the kind of guy who will look forward to family life. I think he'll look forward to new challenges. I think he wants to prove he's the best possibly. And if he beats Fury, he goes into that Super League of maybe the best ever. Undefeated in every stage of his career. He proves me not wrong. I say now he's one of the all-time greats, but I just don't get.
Is he though, Gary? Is he one of the heavyweight all-time greats? I would say absolutely not.
Not yet. No way. No, not close. He beat Joshua twice.
And Chisora.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
And Shaz Witherspoon.
He's not. He's got no resume as a heavyweight yet. I mean, Joshua's a big win, but and I love Joshua. I think he gets a lot of flack. People don't, give him credit for the lack of years, and the lack of experience. He's learning on the job, and you make mistakes on the job. And
Anthony lost loads of fans, didn't he, when he made those comments at the Black Lives Matter rally back in 2020, I believe it was. He seemed to. An awful lot of people got off that bus when he made those comments, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, because that whole Black Lives Matter thing was a strange phenomenon, because all lives matter, right? I mean, I know things happen to black men. I live in America, and the black man in America is prejudiced so badly. I see it all the time. Poor people be getting pulled over just because they're driving a nice car, and it doesn't happen to the average white guy. So no. It's out there, and I don't like it. But when you start, and I don't like the separation that maybe police have with certain minorities or ethnicities. But when you become that same person and start to just section people, then you're becoming the enemy again. So I'm not. I believed in the cause, and I believed in the principle behind it, but I think sometimes it's better to just, you know, be very careful what you say, because
unless it is such a point of principle and so important that you just say it and be damned. But without going down a massive rabbit hole on this particular episode, Gary, what I think with Anthony and the comments he made, the thing that he read out, I think it was a confusing statement to make when you were in his position as quite a corporate clothes horse, you know, Hugo Boss.
Well, I think when you pick a side, you lose a side, you know, and so you have, you know, and I'm all for your beliefs and, you know, and passionate about what you believe, but if you have to be prepared. If you choose a certain route, you lose this route, you know, often. So because it makes this other side feel like they're not educated in the fact or evolved enough to understand. We know that, you know. We know that. We care. We love you. We're all the same. We're all equal people. But when people kind of start to separate, it makes you feel like, well, you think I'm stupid? Like, think I'm not a human being? Like, you think
it's divisive and alienating. Yeah, I mean, it's complex.
There's enough alienation going on as it is without, you know.
Yeah.
That situation that happened, we should focus on that situation and to anyone of that nature, you know.
Yeah, well, exactly, and there have been sometimes people have pointed out situations when the boot was on the other foot and they've not got the same world media crusading attention. But in any case, we're both going for Alexander.
No politics, because I hate politics.
Say again? Well, yeah.
No politics. I hate politics.
I'm very apolitical, to be honest, Gary. To me, it's boxing, music, and literature. That really is about it. But so there's a couple of things I want to ask you again about your own personal history, and not just I want to ask you. We've had some questions since you've kind of been involved with us, you know, with the episode of Sugar and Silk that came on a few weeks ago, which was brilliant. I've got a few comments on Facebook and YouTube. People in particular have been asking me about an altercation that supposedly took place between you and the long fella, which is he's like a well-known person in East London, shall we say. You said you didn't mind discussing it with me. People keep asking about it.
No, because I even read it, and then I watched. One guy was very happy to, you know, it's funny because no matter what happened, someone put out a podcast, and it was the way in which he reveled in it made me laugh. I thought, what an idiot, right? You know, because it's not about giving news. If you revel in the news, then of course you've got a side, or you have an issue, or, you know, so that made me smile. There was an incident, and the first person I gave my autograph to as a professional boxer was an old man.
Yeah.
His name was Harry Cope. And I think I was at your call.
Yeah.
And I came out the ring, and an old man said, "Hey, can I have your autograph?" And I gave it to him. And he followed me in the changing room, and they tried to stop it. I said, "It's fine." He was about 85 or something. I don't know. And I let him come in, and he sat, and he was a big boxer. Everyone knew him. Apparently, he ran with the craze in the day. He was a bit of a boy himself. Yeah. And so, but a lovely old man. And so that was it. And then the next fight, he was there, but he was at most of the fights. And 4, 5, 6 fights, you know, I'd see him at. And one time, I was leaving, and I saw him out coming down the steps, and I said, "Do you live near? Oh, do you need a ride?" He said, No, I'm fine. I have a ride. But there was like a little connection, more so than just, you know, normally just drive by, and that was it. And then I bought a house in Victoria Park, and it was a 2nd-story Victorian, the top 2 floors. And first day I walk out on my terrace, and there's a garden, and then there's another house behind me. And I walk up the terrace, and I look, and there's 2 eyes looking at me, that house. and it was him.
Yeah.
And he used to call me son. What?
Yeah.
Son. I said, Harry. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I just bought this house. He said, I live here. It was amazing, right?
Yeah,
right in front of me, not slightly right or left.
Yeah.
Right in front of me. I said, you live here? He said, they had like 5 sisters or something, right? There was like 89, 92. I said, that's incredible. He started crying, oh son, I can't believe you live here. So that was the end of my life, because if I come home at 10 o'clock at night and he saw the light come on, he was on the door. So 7 in the morning, son, do you want some coffee? You know, it was like, but I loved him. You know, he was an amazing character. And he showed me places in London, the old, I was here with Ronnie and here, and it was just a friendship.
Yeah.
And so I went to a pub one night. I was with Kevin Lushing's brother, Errol Lushing.
Yes.
Me and Errol went, and we took Harry. I used to take him everywhere with me. I used to give him a bit of food money, and you know, we used to dress him. He was always immaculate. So we went to this little pub, and we was on the lash, as you call it. Yeah. And Jimmy Tibbs was there, my former trainer, great friend.
Yeah.
And I guess a bunch of guys who I didn't know. I didn't take much notice of, because I was just, you know, I didn't know. There's a big crowd of people, and we're fucking around, me and Harry, and we used to get quite animated. I think I kept him young, you know. We had such fun.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what we're doing, performing as we did, and then he kind of went to the bar or something, and someone come over to me and said something like, "Hey Mug, what's your problem with the old man?" And I said, "What?" And as I turned around, someone hit me. Don't know who it was. Don't know what. So, and then it went mayhem. So about 4 or 5 guys jumped on Errol, my friend. Don't know how many jumped on me, but it just went chaotic for like a minute. And then somehow it stopped, because Jimmy Tibbs stopped it. I don't know how it happened, but it suddenly stopped. I was against the bar. Yeah. I had a hold of a guy, and I didn't go down. So everyone keeps saying I got knocked out on the bar. It's not true.
Yeah, knocked out cold,
hit.
According to the
yeah.
Circulating.
You know what? What I will say is, I think the most respected man in boxing, for me, the man I respect the most is Jimmy Tibbs.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jimmy could be asked the story. I'm sure he'll be no problem telling it. And so anyway, for me, it's not a big deal. So it stopped. And then Jimmy, we get to an argument, and then somehow it gets explained, what's wrong with you guys? He's with Gary, the man. They thought, so it appeared that they thought that I was taking the piss out of an old man.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't have a clue who hit me. I still don't know to this day, and that's the God's honest truth. So then Jimmy said to me, "Come on, guy, let's better get you out of here," because apparently they're a very serious bunch of guys, right?
Yeah.
So we left. I then found out it was this guy, David Hunt, or his people. I don't know if David hit me or didn't, but and I thought about it the next day. Number one, I'm not an idiot. I found out who the people were, and I'm just a kid trying to make a living, you know. Okay. I took a right hand, okay, and did they think I was taking the piss? If they did, I deserved a right hand, right? Yeah. So if I look at it, like I was upset that I thought, what the fuck was that about? But then I also see if it was David, if David saw me taking the piss out of an old man
and didn't realise it.
Yeah, then there's nothing wrong with what he did, right? So and he genuinely could have saw it that way. So what am I? And even if he was wrong, I'm not going to go try and take on this. I was fine. I didn't get it. I got a burst slip, right?
Yeah.
So I just I took it on the chin. I thought it's sad, but it is what it is. But what could I do? Nothing. I wasn't going to die over a silly incident that maybe these guys felt I was taking the piss, and if they did, then good on them. Because if I saw an old man being in any way abused, I'd do the same. So I didn't think badly of David at all. Yeah. I just thought it is what it is, you know, and that was it for me. And then years go by, and it's this and that. What did upset me is that, you know, people were saying I was taking the piss out of it. No, I hope they understand that wasn't. I think Jimmy explained, but to be honest, over the years I've heard, which is sad, that he didn't like me before for some reason, or maybe he thought I was flash, or which is his right. It's not his right to hit a guy if you don't like him. But I heard from some very good friends and very serious people that David Hunt's a really good guy. And so the sad thing I had is maybe if we had a cup of tea, we'd like each other. You know, I don't know. But
I mean, sometimes it was funny.
People over the years have always said to me, "Do you think you could take David Hunt?" And I've always said the same thing. I said I'll take him to lunch. You know. Yeah. And that's been it.
I've never a good boxer in a day, you know, Gary. Apparently, he had some amateur fights and he wasn't bad.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've heard well, I know he's a serious guy, you know. So, but you know, it is what it is. I took a right hand for whatever reason. It's not the end of the world. It is what it is, you know. And so, if this guy wants to make a podcast about it and in some way feel like he can put me down, Gary Stretch, you know, I'm not. Everyone can take a right hand. I took a few in my life. You know, I've won my share and I've lost a few. So I'm not. I'm just. I'm just a guy that's just trying to make a living. You know, I'm just trying to make a living, and you can't please everybody. You know.
You were never going to be universally liked back in the day. Let's do the checklist. You were good looking. You were, you know, you had a certain swagger. You know, you were pictured with beautiful women in the tabloids. So that's never going to be endearing to the entire world and his brother. You know that.
Yeah, and I understand it, and I have no problem with people if they don't like it. I always try to respect people. You know, it's like a big thing to me, and I try to do my best to help people. If you know, I've always been the same. I've been loyal to my friends, and you know, it is what it is. I don't like everybody. I'm sure, you know, no, I can't expect everybody to like me, but I felt like it was a big misunderstanding.
It's interesting to get it put to bed anyway. I mean, it's something, to be honest with you, I was only aware of it quite recently. As a couple of years ago, I read that book. There's a book, I think it's called Legacy by, I can't remember the author now, but it was quite a daring, bold book about East London, gangland, I suppose. You know, and it talks about it links it all to the 2012 Olympics. And he talks about a lot of those Canning Town figures in particular. And that's when I stumbled upon the passage that you've just alluded to, the incident you just alluded to.
Yeah, and you know, people say it like it's the worst thing in the world. Let's imagine David Hunt knocked me out in a bar, right?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm sure there's not better people out than me in bars, you know? So it's like the whole thing for me was like, it's a situation. It happened. It's done. It's like I woke up in the morning. I'm fine. I'm you know, my dad was not a gangster. He was a very gentle, quiet man. But he used to say to me, if you have a problem with someone, Gary, go home, sleep on it. You know, and if you wake up in the morning, you've got and you still have a problem, then maybe you have to go and do something about it. And so I didn't have a problem. It was what things happened. We was all drinking and things happen. I just moved on, and I hope they moved on. You know, it's like I just don't know what people keep talking about it, because I don't think I'm that big of a deal. I'm not talking about David. I'm talking about this guy who puts the podcast. Like, what would you want to put a podcast out about? Such a got chinned in a bar.
Well,
there's a lot. I've done. It is what it is. But I have no problem with David, or never have. Don't know him. Never met him. Yeah. Again, I've had some really good people tell me he's a really good guy. So, but I don't know. You know. But it was 20 years ago, however long, and I'm still reading about it.
Indeed. Well, I won't be sensationalizing this particular podcast with.
There is one thing though. What's funny? I tell you, there's one thing that's funny. Is there's another one going around that I was in my hometown of England, in St Helens, in a chip shop. And imagine this one, and I pushed in, then went to the front. I'm Gary Stretch. Let me get my chips before you. Can you imagine this? Yeah. And
you know who I am.
You know who I am. I get chips first, right? So, and so I end up getting knocked out by a rugby player. On this particular incident, and they're still writing it. And they give it legend rugby player, whoever. I'm sure he's a legend, but he didn't knock me out, that's for sure. But on this one, I had a mate of mine tell me about it, and I said, "Can you find out when it was?" And he gave me the day. It was such a day, and I hadn't been home. I was in America. I've lived in America 20 years. If you look at my passport, I've been home about 5 times in 20 fucking years. Yeah, I don't think I'd been home in 5 years, so I wasn't even in the country. It's still going around this. But
I'm sure you are familiar with the Oscar Wilde axiom. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, Gary.
Not being talked about, right?
Indeed. And well,
I can't fight. You all know that. I mean, I stole money.
But bringing things to a close and back to boxing, gloved fighting. Tommy Shaw, a good amateur in his own day, has just asked, can you ask Gary who was his hardest fight with?
Myself. No. You know what's funny? Eubanks was the least. Oh, not the least, but I found him. There was nothing I found difficult. This is why I'm haunted by it. I want to jump off a bridge. I found, ironically, Gary Cooper was my hardest fight, because I broke both hands and my nose by round 3.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a tough fight, because both hands were broke. And he had this style. He put his head down a lot, kept hitting on his head. And I'd never broken hands before. I didn't have bad hands, but both hands busted. And then it was, it was hard. It hurt me more to hit him than it did him. And then I kept trying to just bite on the gum shield and throw him, because I wanted to get him out. But there's something like subconsciously, I just think your body pulls them. I really wanted to try and just, okay, the hands broke, just smash him and get him out, because I thought I could have, but I guess somehow you pull instinctively. So it was a long, hard night. And so that was a tough one, but I think it gave, it was a great learning fight, because I did the 12. So it was great to do 12 rounds. That was a tough fight. I had a lot of tough spars, which was much more, Mike McCallum.
Mike McCallum, huh? How was that?
Mugabe. McCallum was amazing. I loved working with McCallum. He trained out of Vegas at the top rank. So I did a few rounds with Mike, many rounds. John Mugabe was an interesting, dangerous guy.
Did he catch you good? Did he catch you sweet, Mugabe? Ever?
No. If he would have, if you'd hit me on the chin, I'd have got booked for speeding, right?
Yeah, no, also, that's what I want to know, because when I ask you how hard did Mugabe hit when you talk about
he almost broke my arm.
Yeah,
he hit me on my arm, and my fucking arm was this big. It was great. It looked like I had big arms, but my arm was like this big for.
Yeah.
I was icing my arm for a week. He put me out of action a little bit.
You know
But I
what Billy
did
Joe
3 days with
Saunders
him.
told me? You know what
Huh?
Billy Joe Saunders said? He would test someone's power, like David Lemieux, for instance. His trick, he said, was to open his guard a little wide around the body, open his elbows a little wide, attempt him to throw a body shot, then he'd block it with his elbow, and he said he could gauge somebody's power from that, or he felt he could anyway.
Yeah, my thing was don't let him hit you. You know?
Yeah.
but no, there was McCallum was a great spar. I worked with a kid who was great, and I think he became world champion. Did you ever hear of a fighter, Manning Galloway?
Absolutely. I like welterweight guy. He lasted a very long time. He beat Pat Barrett.
Ah, okay. Now he had a snap, you know, like he had this pop that was, you know, like John David Jackson.
Yeah.
Another talented. Yeah, I mean, most of the work that I got in the States. I mean, there's a lot of great fights in England, but yeah, I think the Mike McCallum was the and McGarvey was just, he just had to really keep you switched on, you know.
Yeah.
Kirkland Langer spent a lot of time with sparring.
How did you get along with him? Because Kirk was just so unorthodox, and I would have thought frustrating for most people.
I loved him. He was great. He was out of his mind. He used to do this little howl. When he's like talking to you through these, and yeah, he was a nice man, you know. When he was so different, but talented fighter. Yeah, there was but all different for different reasons. That's what's so wonderful about the game. It's like, you know, all of these fighters bring, so interesting. They all bring something different, and I wonder if the likes of the Floyd, you know, he has that little bit of all, you know, because I heard, well, it's common knowledge that, you know, Floyd was made to spar thousands of rounds with everybody for years, you know, when he was a kid. He started throwing in with everybody, and I think when you get that kind of work, because, you know, in the English tradition, or what we do, we're getting ready for fights, a certain amount of weeks sparring, and I heard Floyd was from this big, he just sparred his whole life. And so it's for him, it's just like a walk in the park. Do
you know, Wilfred Benitez did too, but that seemed to have a very grave effect on his longevity and his long-term health. You know,
no, he get a lot of damage. More so in the gym, I think. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You know, but so I'm trying to bring this to some kind of crashing denouement. It's cool what we're talking about now, but I feel we're a bit chilled and a bit comfortable just to say, and this is the ending. Tune in next week. So, can I ask you about one more thing? And it's actually got nothing really to do with boxing.
Yeah.
Max Clifford was your publicist.
Yes.
Back in the day. I remember that because I remember you were on a lot of. You had that crossover appeal and that kind of crossover fame for a little while in Britain. So it's part and parcel to a media guru like that behind you. Obviously, he became disgraced in the end, and I just wanted to ask you what your take on that whole situation was.
I didn't know much about it. Someone put me with him. Didn't know him that well. I went out a few times with him. Nice fella, honestly, for me. I mean, but I was about to start work with him. It was really. I tell you what Max did, which was amazing, which is the main thing with my work with him, is on the Eubank. Someone, I think Alan Lacey, I can't remember, someone brought him in for the Eubanks fight. I think I'd never had any kind of publicity before that. My own stuff was just, I never tried to get publicity, but they wanted to, you know, I had this new bunch of guys around me. For the Eubanks fight, which is a conversation we got to have because I never got paid for that fight. Can you imagine? But that's a conversation I'm really going to get into, and in fact, I'm actually at the stage in my life now where I'm actually going to go and do something about it. But
the only thing I would say about that, I'm all up for that. I'm 100% behind you. The only other interesting thing is, with us launching an assault on the boxing industry as Sugar, Silk, and Stretch, we will be looking probably for accreditation at certain things, and it's going to be an interesting kind of tangent. Where you say,
no, it's a wonderful game. It's fabulous.
We'll figure it out.
But with Max, I say anyway. So they hooked him up with me for the Eubanks fight, and he brought a little boy, who was on Make-A-Wish. And if you watch the fight, you'll see a little boy at the front with a little Stretch hat on.
Yeah. I think
walking down.
Yeah.
And it was his one wish. I don't know how he even knew me, the kid. He was so young, but he knew me for some reason, and he wanted to meet me. And of course, I said to him, walk out with me. And he died, I think, day or so later.
Yeah.
So, it was and I thought it was a, great thing that, as I said, do you do this kind of work all the time? Actually, he said, I tried, I'm very involved with this Make-A-Wish Foundation. So, but I was in America that time, so I didn't really have much contact, And after the Eubanks fight, it was kind of, what are you going to promote?
So I suppose you were as kind of surprised as everybody else was, or maybe some people weren't surprised. I don't know. I think some people in the media might have said they already had the suspicions, but I imagine
you were surprised. Yeah, I mean, you meet people, you just don't know, do you?
No, you don't. You don't.
You just don't know. And no, I didn't have a clue what that was about. But they in fact called me, the police, and asked me and said, do you know anything? I said,
witness anything? Yeah.
No, there's no idea.
Well, he did a good job for you at the time, and that's all we can say, really. But so Gary, will you be about? It's great that you've. As I say, we're called Sugar and Silk for now. We're in this kind of transitional phase. For anyone who that might be interested, Gary called me on Monday and said he was interested in doing something a bit more ongoing with myself and Michael Olajide. We were only too delighted to have him on board. It's already proven to be a really good arrangement because Silk can't make it tonight. In steps Gary. There's time. Last week I couldn't do it, so Gary did it on his own with Jesse James Lahar. So will you be about
Silk
this?
Did it, not me.
Go on.
You said Gary did it. Silk did it, right?
Sorry, Silk did it. Oh, yeah, you didn't. Silk did it on his own. Sorry, with Jesse James Lahar last Sunday. Will you be about Sunday night this weekend, Gary, where we debrief the Usyk Dubois fight, hopefully with the Silk as well?
I'd love to. Can I get you're on Usyk? You said
I'm on Usyk,
and you said. If I'm right, 8 or 9 rounds, right?
8 or 9 rounds, I think, and he might stop him on his feet with a bombardment RSF type situation, yeah. But we'll find out soon enough. We'll hang around, Gary. We'll have a quick debrief backstage. Those of you who tuned in, thank you very much for supporting us tonight. Remember, this is brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. It's brilliant to have Gary Stretch on board. It's only going to get bigger from here. Stay involved. Be lucky. Keep punching.